Lisa. Good morning.
Hey, Steve.
Greetings and salutations. So we started just as we were preparing this podcast, and the word that came up kind of in our brief pre-record conversation was weird.
Weird.
Yes. So there's a couple. So before we get to the actual show, we have three really good segments today. I just want to I want to particularly call out the senator from Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, who is single-handedly, although we know not, blocking the funds needed for Americans who are about to lose their unemployment insurance and be unable to feed their families. He interestingly enough, it turns out, is not running again.
He's on his way out. He shouldn't have an agenda. He should just do what people want.
And I read his bio this morning because I wanted to know who this guy was. It turns out that before he was a senator, he was the president of something called Club for Growth. Are you a member of Club for Growth?
No.
No. It's a little like Hair Club for Men. It's in that category. No, Club for Growth is a super right-wing Republican political action group that's essentially against funding what they call, any programs for people, cutting back government spending, balancing the government budget, and all that stuff. So, here's a guy. He's already decided he's not going to run again, but he's going to draw a line in the sand and say, I want to make this bill have in it terms that say the Fed can no longer do anything like this ever again.
Yep.
After I'm gone.
The worst kind of weird.
The worst kind of weird. But with that, we are winding or grinding toward the end of 2020.
We made it almost.
Well, except for those 300,000 of us who didn't, which is terrible and shocking and saddening and disturbing. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. We've determined it's not a train. But with that, let's just start with the robots. Shall we start with the robots and then we can go from there?
Mm-hmm.
We pulled a couple of articles you probably haven't seen. This one from BD Tech Talks, I think lays it out really clearly. I'm just going to read a paragraph that I found that I thought was really relevant. Here we go. The rapid shift in consumer behavior triggered by the recent crisis is tempting many firms to explore how AI, automation, and bot technologies will deliver scalability and capacity that's needed to cope with the unexpected. For example, those organizations had already deployed AI and automation technologies were able to pivot their operations at a speed to support home-based agents working in close collaboration with voice bots to cope with their significant uptick in call volume. Did you have that experience that all of a sudden you could just tell you were talking to an operator from a company who had gone through a phone tree and you could hear their kids in the background?
No, I've not experienced that, but I have experienced more text-based bots that have actually continued to just disappoint.
So let's jump to this next article because it's specific. There was a list of jobs that the Washington Post said were likely to be were ripe to be automated. And I've heard bits and pieces of this, but I think it's worth reading out loud. Store cashier, clerk, telemarketer, paralegal, cook, waiter, receptionist, bank teller, security guard, data analyst, tax preparer, truck driver are among the jobs often mentioned. Less obvious ones, this is according to the Washington Post, include surgeon, accountant, and financial analysis.
Woof. I'm just squeamish thinking about a robot slicing my body open.
But what's interesting about all those jobs at the beginning of the paragraph is individually I've heard of each of them. I mean, I've heard the story of the fill in the blank X, but I've never heard of them, like paralegal, telemarketer, Yeah, I guess I get those robot calls. Store clerk. Yes, when I go to the local pharmacy, there's those self-checkout lines, although I don't use them, but lots of people do. Security guard. Oh, right. They got those robots rolling up and down the storeway aisles or at the office buildings, kind of looking for activity and reporting it back to, I mean, I think the part of the reason why we started this segment by talking about, robots as opposed to AI is that AI is kind of amorphous. It's this software that lives in the cloud and does stuff. Robots we think of as, R2D2, or RoboCop. The truth is that they're the same thing.
Okay.
I mean, that device rolling up and down the hall at Walmart that's looking for people to stuff things in their backpack is the same. It's the physical incarnation of an automation technology.
Yep. Did you watch Mandalorian?
Not season 2.
Okay. I was wondering if that inspired this. It's very good.
No, I did not. Excuse me, it's coffee time. So which side of this conversation are you comfortable with? Is the rise of automation and AI long-term good for humanity, or do we need those low-level jobs?
Oh man. I mean, everything in moderation, right? And I think change is hard for people. So I'm probably down the road. Like, I think there are certainly amazing applications. Like, it would have been wonderful if we had healthcare workers and nursing home attendants who are robots who could basically exist this year. But in contrast, I can't fathom the number of people who have to reskill or upskill in order to stay employed. And I don't know if they have the resources to do that.
So there is one argument to be made that this whole idea that humans value in society is that they push a button or work at a register or do some some valuable but relatively low skill job. That really what's going to have to be faced is that societally we're going to have to be able to provide economic support for people that don't do kind of easily transferable quote work. They don't quote like, and that's a big human. I mean, this idea that our value is somehow measured by what we do, by the inputs that we put into society. That's not going to happen easily. I mean, do we as a society? So, for example, do you have any friends that are painters or songwriters or poets or musicians or philosophers?
Full-time, no, but part-time, yes.
But that's your definition is really interesting, because what you're saying is they earn a living doing a job, and then they do this arty thing that they don't really earn money for, but that they do for love. Right.
Yeah.
So we have, I mean, I guess my question, and maybe this is something that, listeners have thoughts about, like, do we have to shift to valuing non-tangible inputs to society?
Oh, that I 10,000% believe in. Yes.
So, Andrew Yang has this whole thesis about essentially basic minimum income, which says, if a robot makes something and then another robot buys it and economic value is created and society is economically stable, people shouldn't be starving to death on the streets because they're not writing the code that runs the robot. And so if they want to find another way to add value, that ought to be there shouldn't be survival at stake. I like, I like the idea of basic minimum income.
I just learned that the town in Hudson, just a few hours north of the city, is actually experimenting with it. There are 20 individuals who are the recipients of um, monthly payments of, I think, maybe $500 a month for
Yep.
5 years.
$500. Yeah.
Yep.
Which brings me to this last article. This is from seekerstime.com, which I have to confess I don't know exactly what that is, but I like the headline a lot. Could the advancement in technology be threatening your job security? But then they go on to say maybe that's not a bad thing, is essentially, which I think I think is interesting.
It's not bad if it forces you to learn something new that could get you a better job. Better meaning higher paying, more flexible, whatever your needs are.
And then again, so two things just on the horizon. Uber, which has been the backbone of the gig economy for drivers, was zooming down the road to build their own driverless car, which I found highly ironic. Like you work for Uber, but Uber's made it clear to you that as soon as they can replace the driver with a robot. Now, having said that, they shut down their driverless car division.
Yeah.
So maybe it turns out they just want to buy Teslas for everybody. And similarly, Amazon, which is on a massive hiring spree, hiring, delivery people and warehouse people.
They crossed 1 million workers. They hired 500,000 people this year.
But meanwhile, that internally at the highest level of that company, they're saying, how many employees do we have in warehouses today? And they're telling Jeff what the number is. They're saying, how many fully robotic warehouses do we have? And there's lots of robots working in those. And they're saying, okay, where's the point on the map where those two things cross? Where robots can go find the thing, get it, take it off the shelf, move it to the assembly line, put it in a box, seal the box up, put a label on it, and send it off to UPS. Not to be disrespectful to our robot friends, but those tasks are automatable. They're not that hard.
Yeah, it's just gonna be so much more of more. Meaning, yes, some people will lose jobs, but I think more robots are gonna be produced. Those robots are gonna need other robots or people to program them, to maintain them, to administer them, I guess.
I saw a student tech project the other day in which AI was looking at MRIs of cancer clusters and being able to predict with 96% accuracy what kind of cancer you had.
Wow.
And when I asked the students, how someone that was a radiologist felt about this, it was funny. I mean, they seemed kind of puzzled by the question. Like that wasn't their assignment, was to save radiology. It was to improve cancer diagnosis. And they said, oh, we'll still need doctors at the very, very end of the process to review the scans to make sure it's accurate, because there are some mistakes. But much like playing chess, if you've ever played chess against a robot, I'll spoiler alert, you lose. If a robot can look at 10,000 patients in an hour and determine that of those 10,000 patients, each of them has this diagnosis, and then kick that to one radiologist to review the final results of the 10 most serious, and in fact, I read somewhere years ago that one of the first medical professions to be impacted by robotics was radiology, and I didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah.
But it's high-speed pattern matching.
Yeah. Just like the paralegal replacement is basically like Google search for law, right?
I guess everybody's, rental agreement is relatively the same.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's move on. So we've laid out that robots are coming, and that the many things that COVID has accelerated. Some of them good, many of them terrible. The shift toward remote workers and automated workers seems to be inevitable and faster moving than anyone could have anticipated.
Yep.
So now let's talk about this issue of healthcare. So this is a headline from the CT Examiner, and are you being steered away from your local pharmacy?
You know what's funny is I don't think I've ever had a local pharmacy that wasn't CVS.
So I have a couple stories in this regard. One is CVS has a pharmacy division called Caremark. It has the same color red. It has the same logo. It looks exactly the same. But when you talk to one about the other, they act like they don't know each other.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And they compete with each other.
Huh. Okay.
So I'll tell my CVS horror story of the morning, and then we can get into Amazon Pharmacy as an alternative. So I have a prescription that renews every 90 days. I've had it for a long time. It's nothing complicated. I go online, I renew it. This time it said, this is your local pharmacy, and it gave me the address, and it said, would you like us to deliver it for free? Sure, deliver it. Fine. A day later, my phone rings, and it's a recording, and it says, this is CVS calling about your prescription, and they don't say the name of it. They say, for your privacy, please type in the year of your birth. And I always find that I've had that question be asked before, and I always find it incredibly ironic that for my privacy, an unknown number is going to call me and ask me private information, and I'm supposed to give it to them.
I bet I could Google your birthday though, and it comes up somewhere.
Probably. So yeah. I type it in, and then they want something else private. I don't remember what it is, and I'm annoyed, and I type 0. I try to get to an operator, it doesn't work. There's now a wall. So finally, I give this personal information to this robot, and then it puts me through to an operator line, and it says, all our operators are busy with other callers. Please stand by. So the robot called me, not knowing that there was a place in line for me, and now I'm supposed to wait patiently to speak to the human.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So I wait, annoyed, and I get on the phone with the human, and the human asks me for my date of birth and the other personal information because the robot didn't pass that information through. And it turns out that they needed my credit card updated. Fine. But I say to the woman, where is this medication coming from? And she says, oh, it's mail order. And I'm like, no, I just want it to come from the pharmacy or I'll go pick it up. She's like, oh, well, that's not what you ordered. So they had switched me from my local pharmacy to mail order without my knowledge, then been unable to charge my credit card because it was updated at the pharmacy, but not at this robot. And now they've gotten my new credit card information.
Yeah, Matt had something similar happen to him too. And then he finally got it to be sent to a local Walgreens maybe, but it couldn't even be the one nearest to us. It was only one specific one that we had to go out of our way to get to.
So I saw a piece on the news the other day about Caremark, the CVS delivery system. And it was shot in a warehouse. It was the head of the woman who runs it. And it was shot with her talking about the speed at which they can deliver prescriptions. And behind her was something that I could only describe as an Amazon warehouse. Fully automated, racks of things, racks of boxes. So like clearly CVS has made a decision at the highest level that they want to automate, oh, your patient number 13475, you have a prescription number, blah, 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 blah. You need, cream of this. We're going to go, the robot's going to go get it, put it in the box, stamp it shut, ship it to you. Yeah. No human involved.
Yep. So you have CVS, big players, then Walgreens, Amazon PillPack, which I hadn't heard of or used, and Walmart, which I knew was definitely getting into this space.
So here's the weird thing about the Amazon move into healthcare. If healthcare is about a local pharmacy and a pharmacist and being able to say, hey, I know that my prescription isn't up for renewal for another 4 days, but I'm going on vacation. I really need it today. Can you make an exception? And the guy behind the counter says, yeah, Steve, you're a regular customer. We know who you are. Sure. We'll issue it to you 3 days early with my manager's code, versus a robot CVS phone call into a robot queue. Like, if it's already, that's where it's already going to end up, then Amazon's way better at it than CVS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What happened to there's like a pill company, like a startup doing delivery. Do you remember? They had ads everywhere.
Isn't that PillPack? Isn't that? No, it's not. No, it's not. You're
No, it was
right.
a startup. Like,
Yeah. No, you're right.
and I thought they were gonna, I was like convinced they were gonna get bought by CVS, Walgreens, Walmart. But I haven't heard of them in a while.
PillPack was a startup that got bought by Amazon.
Okay.
And it's essentially, I mean, I get it. If you take a bunch of medication, having it come in a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday sealed, little plastic openable thing seems like a good thing to do for, particularly the elderly who have lots of different medications. But
it also seems like more people are willing to subscribe to pills or get things delivered, like Roman, right? It's not for all drugs, but hair loss, erectile dysfunction, they're like blowing up. They're huge.
Yeah. I find the ads for Roman disturbing. So I guess the question for healthcare is, have we already determined everything's going to be centralized and automated, and the jury's just now it's just out who's going to win that battle?
Everything's automated, and we'll never step foot into a CVS again.
But the other thing, and this is maybe the thing that I found most interesting. So when I finally got to the operator for CVS after the robot put me in the queue to talk, like, she's like, thanks for calling. How can I help? I'm like, I don't mean to be annoyed at the phone operators because I know it's not their fault, but like, I got annoyed. I'm like, I didn't call you. She's like, excuse me? I'm like, you called me. She's like, I didn't call you. I'm like, some phone called me from CVS and put me in the queue to talk to you. She's like, oh, yeah. She's like, sorry about that. She's like, that's terrible, right? And then you have to wait. I'm like, yeah. She goes, we've complained to our managers, but they don't care.
There's this like critical missing step. Maybe it happens, or maybe the training is bad, but I feel like when I speak to customer service reps on the phone, often I could actually hear their accent, and they're Filipino. And I have relatives who work in call centers, so I feel like I can say this. I feel like they don't actually know where they are in the customer experience, or it's like not laid out to them that the way I got to you is through a received call.
Well, so let me be cynical now for a moment. The reason why no one in the company has spent any amount of time communicating that to them is because it changes every 2 weeks, and the roadmap has them not being in the customer experience at all. So the roadmap is customer calls in, gets to a robot asks questions, customer answers with birth date and blah, 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 and keyword and order number. It gets shipped to another queue, which says your order has been shipped. Hang up. That's like in terms of a score, like that's the huge win, is when you can get a customer question responded to with no human involvement. So,
Right.
So how many button pushes do you have to click before you get these operator 00000? And it used to be 3, and now it's 4, and soon we're going to make it 5. And they're going to keep kind of coming back to you. And I've had experiences where the robot simply says, I'm sorry, you haven't given me enough information to find this account. I'm hanging up. And there's no way to get to a human. And And similarly, I guess the people that are in that queue, the customer support people, are being fed calls from 19 different inbound verticals. One is an email, one is a phone call, one is a so they don't know where people are coming from in the customer experience because it's different. And you're right, there's no alerting them. This is a customer we called versus this is a customer who called us versus this is an order that's stuck on a, like, it seems like I'm increasingly being forced to tell the system what it can do to simplify getting money from me.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of money, last chapter, let's talk about IPOs.
Crazy. Weird. This is a weird part, the really weird part of the show, where we talk about the market, which is doing all sorts of wild things, even though 1 in 7 Americans are food insecure.
Are you going to buy? Are you going to buy shares in Coinbase?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm a Coinbase user. I put $20 in, I don't know, 4 years ago on kind of a dare, and have ignored it and went back and found my login and got into it the other day. And the $20 is now worth $220. And I'm like, shit, damn, back, time travel, $20, make it 200, make it 2,000, make it 20,000. Like, shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I mean, wild. I already made money on Airbnb, and like, it's still a pandemic. I'm not traveling.
All right, so you stop me when I'm asking personal financial information that you don't want to share. But like, so do you have a broker? Do you call a broker and say, I want to buy shares in Airbnb, or do you do it? Are you like a day trader?
I use public.com, where you can buy fractional shares. And that's sort of like a fun thing because you can invest $25, $50, $100. And it's kind of like a social network. And it's meant to really help democratize like day trading, I guess, or change the culture of finance. It just raised $60 million. Disclosure, my friend Katie is the head of marketing there. So shout out Katie. And public.com is an app. I also use Betterment, which is just like Robo Trader. You know, I set it and forget it. And then I also have a Vanguard account.
But that takes work.
A bunch of like 401ks and like Fidelity. There's definitely some type of startup or service or something that will help people like me consolidate 401ks. That's just one of those like digital tasks I will never prioritize.
So there was a piece on NPR about Robinhood.
Yep.
Which
they're probably an IPO like next year.
So everything I've heard about Robinhood goes in the pure evil category. Like it's gamified investing and makes people think that they're playing with play money and losing a lot of money and kind of turning the stock market into like gamification nonsense. But I worry that, I mean, having not looked at it, public isn't that, right? No.
I can't compare. I mean, there are definitely like limits and controls. Like, I don't think I could spend, $700,000 that I don't have. Because that's what happened, I think, with that kid who committed suicide.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in terms of the IPOs that are coming up and why we think they're, I mean, I get why Coinbase is going to go through the roof. Bitcoin somehow seems to have turned the corner and gone from being this thing hanging out on the edge of the universe to being, increasingly a safe place to put money. And although interestingly enough, I have some money sitting in a savings account that's not earning anything. And so I'm looking for a place to put it. And I spoke to my financial advisor and said, what about Bitcoin? And he said, we don't advise it. I said, nothing that we can do through one of our, he said, nope. He said, we wouldn't touch it.
Interesting.
So
too much risk.
Yeah, too much risk. So then there's this last article, UiPath. UiPath files confidential IPO paperwork, could become one of New York City's biggest tech companies. This is on CNBC. So first of all, how is it a confidential IPO if we know about it? I think that's weird. But
Is it a sequencing thing? I don't know. I'm wondering if it actually just has to do with the fact that the S1 filing isn't available right now.
All right, well, I'll just read you the key points from the top of the article. Robotic processing automation company, UiPath. Back to the beginning of our show, we've noticed how we just looped right around back to robots. The company becomes the largest taking advantage of a frenzied IPO market. Fine. Earlier this year, UiPath raised $225 million at a $10.2 billion valuation, one that would rank it the most valuable New York City tech company at the time of the time of its Wall Street debut. The company is ranked 50 among this year's CNBC Disruptor list, taking advantage of the bull. What does it do? I can't figure out.
Software, right?
UiPath uses artificial intelligence to build software robots that let companies automate back office, repetitive, time-consuming tasks. The goal is to move humans away from this work and allow them to focus on things that bring more value to the company, like unemployment. I'm sorry, I added that last part of it. Investors. So I know nothing about UiPath, but I feel like I probably have to learn something about it.
This space is exploding. It's tangential. It's not direct competitors, but Retool, AutoCode, Unquirk, API Blitz. Like, I actually study or follow a lot of what they call like no code, low code tools, because I work with developers, and it's a space that is increasingly growing. And I think maybe one thing to point out is, like, even though the robots might replace jobs, we are still living in this age with the rise of the developer. And even though it's easier than ever to kind of automate or make the software go, because it's more pervasive, ubiquitous, it's impacting industries, we still are at a point where we need more of it.
Yeah,
and people to make it. Design it. And
I thought I was going to demo it today, but I'm not ready to demo it. But I'm in the process of building a virtual world, and
cool.
And no code, all tools that I'm messing with myself.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're leaving on a weird note. I think maybe that's where we are. Is weird new year, weird old year. Hopefully, good new year.
The longest year ever.
Longest year ever. And with that, we are going to wrap things up and see you next week.